Welcome to the We as Citizens podcast. Here is your host, Christina Crowley.
Welcome to the podcast. Today I have with me William Brown. William is a speaker, coach, a podcast host, and he's also an author. And today I am going to talk with him a bit about his one-word conversations. William, welcome to the podcast, and so glad you're able to join me today.
Oh, it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about myself. I married for 30 years, father of 4 adult children. I think I'm an optimist. Sometimes I question that, but it's really caused me to just show up in my life, right? And that I've embraced that I'm an opportunist, that I'm looking for opportunities that are always available, that I just want to be a part of, and I think that I can make a difference in. And so I think that's who I am. And so following my curiosity, I can just show up that way.
That's a wonderful description. It talks about who you are and your philosophy of life. Thank you for that. We met because of your one-word conversations.
Yes.
Tell us about how did that come around?
It started off as, like a lot of people, 2020, we had a lot of plans, right? And one of my plans was to get off the ground my framework of disconnect to connect. And I saw it as a lot of events, a lot of conversations around what do we need to do what do we need to disconnect from so we can connect to what's important. And then COVID happened. And I was like, okay, I'm committed to this conversation, but all the things that I thought that I would be doing, like, gathering and meeting and, throughout, my town of Greenville, South Carolina, I couldn't do. And so I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was like, well, I'm thinking of doing a live, and because I want to have conversations to make a difference, and I just don't know what that means. And we're going to look at one word and just kind of go from there. And he says, well, when are you going to start? And I said, well, I don't know, probably a week or so. He says, well, I'm available tomorrow, and I can be your first guest. So I said, okay. So we did the first show. The word was connection, and we talked about connection and everything. And the show was named Conversations That Make a Difference, right? And halfway through the conversation, he said, "Oh, this has been a lovely one-word conversation." And I was like, "Huh, that sounds a lot better. That flows a lot easier." And the more that I kind of embraced the one word of it, the more that I allowed it to like unfold, and just be committed to the conversation, and we'll see what this one word conversations is all about.
How many of them have you had so far?
Today I did 320.
Wow.
Right, episode 320. Yeah.
And that's amazing. So you've done a whole lot of those conversations, 320.
Right.
What are some of the things that have surprised you that you've learned?
Well, the first thing that really surprised me is that I really thought that I was a good listener. And I learned from having these conversations that I don't want to say I wasn't, but I could be a better listener, and that I can listen deeply, not to just people that I know, but the people that I'm in conversation with, whoever I'm in conversation with. And it really came up because, because I was so focused on the one word that I had to listen how this word connected to anything else that they were saying. And the more that I was listening, I was like, wow, they're really passionate about that. Or wow, there is some pain there. And it was like, wow, I was just listening to words before. I'm now listening to people sharing their heart and sharing, what they're going through. And so I really got for myself that listening is key. Words can trip me up quickly, but the more that I'm willing to listen, the more that I can start with that one word, but there's a lot of other things behind that.
Yeah, I'd have to say with our conversation, I was on your show and I was nervous. I was really nervous about going on.
Hmm.
I'd watched some of them because we had just met, and it was because you listened that the conversation flowed, and it made me a lot more at ease. And that one word was it. It was a lot bigger than I originally thought when you sent it to me because I thought done.
Right.
Oh my gosh, I bet it did. It meant so much more. And we had this very long conversation,
Right.
45 minutes to an hour,
Yeah.
about the word done.
Right.
And I think we forget the words, they mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And
Right.
to have a conversation listening to both sides
Right.
so that we have it.
Yeah. And just with done, because I would think about my kids and parenting, and it's like, I want this done, right? And I know what that meant.
Mhm.
But then when I would come back to my son's room, it's like, yeah, this ain't done, right? Right? It's like, you may think this is done. We have enough failure to communicate right here.
Yeah.
And I think from our conversation that what I really got was that something, you can be done with something, but it's not
Mhm.
complete.
Yeah.
And it was like there were so many things that I felt that were not complete in my life that I was done with for a number of reasons.
Mhm.
And so my relationship with done, right? How done landed for me was totally different
Yeah.
than finishing something.
Yeah.
And through our conversation, I was like, all right, I need to recognize that, you know what? I'm done with this right now, but I am open to come back and finish this, but not
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah. And I've taken that conversation with me, and the idea of, because I had to, no, I didn't have to. I wanted to listen to what that meant to you.
Right.
And in conversations since then, it's really helped me be a better listener.
Hmm. Wow.
And that's what I have found, having been a participant and somebody who's watched it.
Hmm.
And you've learned so much. What are you finding about the people who join you?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it's a gamut, right? There are people that have their own shows and they want to, promote what they're doing. And there's people that just want to be a guest and they have something that they're passionate about that they want to share. And they someone said to me, I think it was someone that was on the show, it's like, wow, you've built a nice little tribe here. And thanks for inviting me to be a part of it. And for me, it it wasn't, I mean, that wasn't my intention. There's a part of me that I just wanted to have conversations with people that I could learn something from them. And I think at the end of this, yeah, this was pretty cool, that what you're up to. But what I've really realized, because when I reach out to people who have been on the show, they're like, yeah, whatever you want to do, I'm on board. And it's like, wow, it's like, and there's this feeling, I mean, and it's the same I felt with you, that I knew you long before we had a conversation. And so there was this, like, but I just didn't know you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was like, all right, by the end of 40 minutes or almost an hour, it was like, all right, I have, a newfound friend.
Mhm.
And it's just amazing in the short amount of time. And I think the key is the listening.
I want to, and in watching the show and in hearing people talk, and we are from diverse backgrounds, I find it refreshing because it's hard to get people to listen nowadays without seeing them thinking about their response.
Right.
No matter if it's a civil discussion or if it's a heated discussion,
Right.
people, they're so absorbed with getting their thoughts across that they aren't just letting what people are saying, come back in. And that's what
Right.
I found a lot within your show.
Right. I know. I think that the one thing I was mentioning about what's come to mind is the two. I've had two challenging conversations, possibly three, and they were all for three different three different reasons. One was that they just wanted to promote their business. That's it. They didn't want to have a conversation with me. It was just their business. The other person, I think, I don't want to say they didn't. The energy of the word was judgment, right? So, and I say the judgment showed up. That's just it. So you it wasn't how does judgment land for you and how are you dealing with. It turned into an hour of this is how I'm judgy, right? And it was just like, wow, okay, wow, it's like in stone, right? Right? It's like, and it's just like, and it was just like I learned something, and there was I got a lot of feedback that it was like, oh, that was very entertaining. I was like freaking out the whole time because I'm used to these lovely thought provoking things, and it's like I wanted to like choke them through the screen, right? I mean, it's like, and so so I was like, I'm listening, I'm mad, I'm listening, I'm listening, right? And it's just like really dealing with that. And the other one was, the word was interesting. And I think it was my relationship to that word that caused interesting to show up in that conversation too. But it was just, I don't want to say no one was like up to like playing along or really being themselves, and to the point that, hey, this is a give and take and we're kind of exchanging what we think about this word. But it was like, okay, this is what I think of this word, and I will always think this of this word. And I will however long we're talking, I'm just going to continue to reinforce that this is what this word means, no matter what else you think it means. So, and it was like, wow, okay, so yeah,
Because I think the real you does show up, but
right,
can you go deeper into the real you?
right,
Uh, and that's what I find so fun about your conversations for me and for in watching people.
right,
Just you kind of see it. I'm glad it's a video show because you
right,
see their face, you see the conversation, because that is a big part
right,
of conversation, our body language, our what our face is saying.
right.
And yeah, I think the original me showed up, but the conversation kept going and going and going, and it's so much fun to see that in others.
It's and I think I try to set that up. I did this intentionally with the introduction, and because I will let you know that there's some people, not many, but a few people that are in the podcast world think that I am not as professional as I should be because I don't introduce my guests. And I ask my guests to introduce themselves. And the reason why I do that is that I believe that how we speak of ourselves, what we say about ourselves, is letting the listener know who is speaking and listening. And so I am listening for how they describe and what they say, and then I have a conversation with that person. Now, if you want to give me your bio, all right, I understand. That's who's in this conversation here, and go from there. And the more that I give people space to show up however it feels comfortable for them, however they like, then I think, like you were saying, we can get to you. And it's like, hey, yeah, it's okay for me to have my feelings about this. And well, people will do that inquiry, right on screen, right? It's like,
Mhm. Mhm.
what do I think of this? Right?
I found it refreshing to be able to explain who I am, and that's why I kind of on my own podcast, 'cause I've hosted a few, but on this one in particular, I give a brief synopsis of what
Right.
you said of who it is, and then I ask people uh, to definitely explain who they are and
Right.
tell us a little bit about themselves, because you may think of something that I didn't see on the bio that was sent
Right.
over.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And there is something unique about, and I mean, not necessarily, I don't know if it unique is the word, of it coming from your own voice,
Right.
of, the tonality of somebody describing themselves. And for me, it tends to change a little bit,
Right. Oh,
you
oh
know?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like even me, it's like sometimes it's like, um, who showed up to this conversation right now?
Mhm. Yeah.
And just be okay with that person. This is who I am. And and this is who wants to be a part of this.
Because we're multifaceted people. We're
Right.
uh, we have a myriad of emotions
Right.
that come. What part of that has surprised you over the past year that you've been doing this?
Hmm. I what surprised me is just how comfortable I've gotten with people, because I guess because I'm, inviting you to have our first conversation in front of people, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so it's so, most of the times, I label myself an introvert. So in, larger settings or in networking settings or anything like that, I'm like, I feel very guarded, and it's like, okay, I need to be professional. All of those labels show up and say, okay, this is how everything should go. And then, second meeting, third meeting, then I kind of, oh, okay, I feel comfortable enough um, to, I guess, to give you a little more, right? Or
Yeah.
something. However, and the fact within, a short amount of time, there is this comfort level for me to um, show you how my brain works and doesn't work, right? Like, laugh at something, laugh at myself, or, or just kind of be. And every once in a while, I'll say, well, the podcast label was saying I need to like move on, right? Right. It's like, so it's like, I guess, I have to remember that I'm also the host of this thing. But it has really surprised me how quickly, but that was also my intention, because I said, hey, if I'm inviting people to do this, I need to be open too. I
Yeah.
need, if they ask me a question, I just need to answer it. I can't hide behind, yeah, I'm not going to answer that, or, or something, because it's coming up within the conversation.
A lot of what you do, because having looked through your one sheet, a lot of what you do is as a speaker, it's as an author, and you coach people,
Right.
and along with the podcast host. So it surprises me that you're feeling like the One More Conversations is showing more of who you are than any other side of you, since what you do is a lot of putting yourself out there.
Yeah, it's kind of, when I had a technology company, consulting company, for a number of years. And I remember when I was doing that, I was the tech guy, come in, help you with your systems and all that. But I would notice, I don't want to say the people problem, but the things that weren't technology problem. Let's just say that, right?
Okay.
So, um, but many times people, my clients would say, well, yeah, that is the case, but I want you to just focus on the technology. And I say that as that I had departmentalized myself so much that it's like, this is how I need to show up here. This is how I, now that I'm the speaker, now that I'm this is the different ways. And I've found very quickly by doing one word that I can just be William Brown and just kind of show up every once in a while. The coach shows up and I'll ask a coachy type question or something, or there is something that I now use in my speech or my speaking, or just recognizing that the more that I'm present, there's all parts of me that will show up within the conversation, and just be okay with that.
Have you ever had to bite your tongue other than maybe the person who and the word of judgment?
Um, there was a conversation where race came up, and I don't know if I just wasn't in the mood, but but it was just like, if I would have said what the first thing that went through my mind, I would have shut it down, right? I mean, it would, because it was really, let's just say it was off brand, right? Like,
Okay.
but it was something that there's a part of me that understood what they were trying to say, and but it just rang hollow, and it was like self-serving, and I was just like, no. And I just smiled, and I just
Mhm.
said, well, that's an interesting way of looking at that, right? And just because it was, but it kind of went against me just honoring, if something comes to mind. I don't know if it came up in our conversation. I call them downloads. It's like something comes to mind. I haven't figured it out, but it's coming out of my mouth. So good luck, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully it makes sense enough for you to respond to what I say. But by not honoring that, by just saying, all right, this is what I'm getting, I am choosing not to say that.
Yeah.
Because if I say that, this conversation will shut down, or then I will have to make maybe some editing choices, or I will have to do some cleanup, which I have no problem with
Yeah.
that, because I believe in what I call perfecting communication,
Mhm.
is that you say what you're going to say, and clean up what you need to clean up.
Yeah.
And that, because of my relationship with you, if you have a challenge or are triggered by something, I am willing to clean up the conversation, or to really explain myself, if it's one word or many, to go there. So it, that wasn't the issue. The issue, for me, really holding my tongue, was, I don't think I'm in a good space in my head right now to
Yeah.
really deal with what went through my mind right now.
And that kind of is also about, I'll ask you this, was it about being a good host, or was it about your own, no, your own decision, let's move on?
One of my, I guess, strong labels, is the nice guy label. And the nice guy label has gotten me, in trouble, and it's kind of gotten me out of a lot of it, right? And so I would like to believe that the nice guy label showed up, but in partnership with the host, saying that, all right, this is our guest.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is how we treat our guests. This is how, because there was something that I said in the beginning, like when I guess in the first 100, and then I just stopped saying this, like um, in our pre-time, is that I would tell people, because I think in the beginning there's a lot of things going on. There were protests going on.
Yeah.
There was just a lot of things happening in the news, and I'm just talking one word and everything. But what I would say was, hey, I am not going to introduce any public events anything, current events or anything right now. I'm not going to enter any of that in any of the storytelling or anything that comes up around this word with that. If you want to, I will go along with you, but I am not going to blindside you in my fear and just kind of bring you into, what do you think about X, type of thing. And because that was a concern of mine. And then it wasn't a concern because I just didn't do it, right? And so there was a part of me that really wants my guests, and that's why I invite my guests about 10 or 15 minutes before we start, just if there's any nerves, if there are a large percentage of my guests don't watch the show before they come on. And they tell me why. It's like, I don't want to try to perform. I don't want to kind of like show up like your last guest or something. And there was a lot of I was surprised by that, because there were some questions that I was getting that I was like, watch the show, stop asking me that question. Right now, right? It's like,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But it was but I recognize, because when you say a podcast, or when you have those labels, people expect them to show up a certain way.
Yeah.
And as you know, my show is different than most, and so when people really acknowledge that, you know what, I really don't know how this is going to go, but I got a good feeling about this, but I decided not to watch or listen to any of this. And I was like, well, okay, well, let's see.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, I over prepare for everything. I because nerves do get to me. I'm always nervous, even on my own show.
Right.
And so I think I can understand why certain people just didn't want to. But yeah, they're definitely it would alter the way you show up for it. That's fun.
Right. And then there was at least two that I can remember, because they were hilarious conversations afterward. But this one guest said to me that I watched I signed up, and then I watched a couple shows, and then I decided to do the show, right? Because how you talk to people, because how you listen to people, and I really felt that I knew you, and I got a sense of what it was, how you're going to
Mhm.
treat me and be with me. And so it was like an old friend. So she like pre-qualified me to kind of speak to her, and it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I totally, I totally got it. But it was just like, one person, she said, I just wanted to make sure you weren't a crazy person, because
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
like, one more conversation. I have no idea what that means. This is a crazy person, right? Right?
Well, and if it's going on the internet and it's gonna be there forever, I suppose you would want to know.
Right. Right. So it was just hilarious. I was like, yeah, I hopefully I'm not a crazy person.
Yeah, I think with as many shows as you've done, you'd know by now and you would get that feedback.
Right. It's like, yeah, so it's fun.
That I never thought of it that way, but I understand. And what are your hopes for the show? I mean, you've done a lot
Right.
and it's changed since the beginning,
Right.
certain things about it. So where do you want to see it grow?
I think I want to be more intentional. And so, but I am it was it's kind of interesting, because I'm starting to use some of the language from the conversations that I have. But I'm going to try, and what I mean by try is cautiously doing, right? That came up within one of the when try was the word.
Mhm.
Um, but I am going to try to be more intentional with what I currently believe the power of one word conversation is. That I want to really say that if there is any feeling of disconnection that you have, if there's a sense that you can't communicate with someone because of political views or whatever, my solution is one word conversations.
Yeah.
It's just have one word. Let's just see one word at a time, build on that. All of the other paragraphs and agendas, all that kind of, we'll deal with those things later. Let's just do one word. And I think the more that, because I will say this, I don't believe that we are divided as much as we think we are. I think there is a lack of understanding of each other. And I think if we approach each other as if that we're not divided, but there's an understanding that I need to get on how you see the world, how you communicate in the world, so we can do things together. And my solution, and that's why I say it's a self-discovery and relationship building conversation, is that I really want to walk into every conversation and say, what can I learn today? Not just about the person that I'm speaking to, but about myself. And then so I can really be there for them in this conversation, and other conversations that I may get to have. There are some guests of the over 300 guests that I'll probably never talk to again, just because there's one person that said their plan for 2020 was to have 200 episodes. She wanted to find 200 interviews and just go at it. So I was just one of many. It's like, and it went well, right? So it's like, okay, so in her mind, she's not a part of my tribe or anything. She was just on my show. And that's fine. And so, but I really want this show to move to that anytime that we're at odds with people that we care about or people that we don't even know, we're willing to have a one-word conversation to learn a little bit more about them.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to move forward. And as you were talking about that, I started to think, over all of these shows that you've done, what kind of feedback or what kind of thoughts has your wife thought about this past year?
It's it's kind of funny because I was committed to conversations like this. I recognize that I was committed to these type of conversations daily, and I proved it because I did a daily show. And I was talking to my wife about it once, and she was like, "Oh, I'm so glad that you have a show because I can't have these conversations daily," right? It's like, I love you and it's not that deep, right? Right? And so that's 30 years talking right there, right? But recognize that she said to me when we were talking about the show and me doing it, is that she sees that I'm present more. I am not in my head, because that's where most of my conversations were, because I didn't have people more than my wife, right?
Yeah.
And if I didn't have a networking thing and I was just working or something, if there's something that I needed to process, it was either, okay, let's just kind of figure it out in my head. And so because I'm more present because of the show, then I am available to have conversations, with her and be available to that. So I didn't realize that, because I think there was one show, it's like, look, I'm not saying that in order to improve your relationship or your marriage, you need to have a podcast, but it's helped me, right? And it's really recognizing that growing and connecting with people all over the world was important to me.
Mhm.
I didn't realize how important it was to me until I started this.
Yeah. And I think that just sounds amazing and really wonderful. What else about the show would you want to say?
Mm.
Anything?
I I think that the biggest thing that I do want to say about the show is that I'm glad I trusted my intuition. I trusted what I was feeling, even though that I was scared. There was a lot of, as they say, imperfect actions, and there was this momentum of imperfect actions that it was like, whoa, we're at 100. Whoa, we're at 200. Okay, let's kind of put like figure out what we got here. And so that the fact that I'm committed to these conversations, but I'm not committed to this format of having these conversations
Yeah.
will allow me to just stay in this conversation and change the world and just be in it. And I think um that's the power of these type of conversations. And what I don't want to say, I don't believe I created one word conversations. I think I discovered it, right? I discovered a way for to really connect with people that I felt would take a lot of time to connect to. I mean, without the show, I wouldn't have met you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There is over 300 people within a year that I got to meet because of the show. And it's just fascinating to me about that. And to have them say something similar to what you said, that you just look at how you communicate with people. Not only your word shows up, more often, but how other words show up to you and what you're saying and how other people are speaking. It's just the way language shows up for you differently because of this one word conversation. So it is, yeah, I'm just like honored to just kind of trust myself to be able to do it.
Yeah, conversation is a lost art and it really matters. And I love your show because you're bringing it to a new place for people to discover, even if they're just listening
Mm.
to it. And I think a lot is what a lot of podcasts do. Are you staying on Facebook? Are you moving to Clubhouse? Where is it?
Yeah, I'm staying on Facebook, and so what's going to happen is that I'm reducing a number of days to do live, and I'm doing 2 days live, and on Facebook and YouTube. And then I am going to be on Clubhouse for a day. And yeah, I think that's where, and then I'm going to add an audio portion of it.
Cool.
It's like most of the times, and I think you probably could appreciate this. Most audio podcasts, I guess, fail or kind of stop because of content and just kind of the momentum of the whole thing. And just because it kind of takes a lot. And I've built myself like, an over 300, road runway, right?
Yeah.
Of episodes to start, and slowly editing and kind of putting
Mhm.
some things and really deciding how that was going to show up. Wow, all the videos are available on YouTube for
Yeah.
people to kind of go and to see that, so I can promote this new way of this conversation at the same time. All of them are available as I'm making a couple of them a week. And so it kind of frees me up to do shows like this and
Yeah.
and talk about it. But it's just really, I really want, as I said before, I want to be able to put it in practice.
Mhm.
how does one word conversations kind of relate to my self-awareness coaching? It is just aware of the words, the language, how how you are being, how you're showing up. And yeah, I'm just so excited about connecting those dots for myself and having people through their language, because that's how our self-expression shows up, is in our language, right?
For sure.
um, and really have that one word at a time really discover yourself and reveal yourself at the same time.
Yeah. And I think with your conversations, you're being the change.
Mm,
And that I don't think you saw it at the beginning, but you are the change
right.
that you see that is needed in the world. And I so appreciate that.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. The We as Citizens podcast, because conversation matters.